back. It's been 6 months since our last podcast. An apology is due. You see, U.S. Soccer has introduced brand new Grade 7 and Grade 6 classes for this year, about 26 presentations in all. And as the technical director of all the material produced for the Minnesota State Referee Committee website, I had to convert all of these presentations to our native certification system, plus produce another half dozen or so for our traditional recertification work. So, yeah, that was a lot of work, and that's where we've been for the last 6 months. But as a special reward for all of your patience, in December we're going to do a podcast double dip. This regular podcast plus the Dark Side podcast later this month. So again, sorry about the wait, but we have plenty of good, new, important material for you this month. This month's podcast is going to focus 100% on offside. Now, you might hear that and start to assume, oh no, offside is boring, that gets covered everywhere. Well, I have some news for you. This will likely be the most important podcast we have produced in the 3 years that we've been putting these out. Seriously, the material covered here is critical material because we are going to cover a significant paradigm change in how we evaluate one specific segment of Law 11. It's so important that we will be distributing this podcast to every coaching organization in the state of Minnesota. So don't take this podcast with a grain of salt. This is really important stuff. First, let's review some documentation and history. In summer 2013, IFAB released its changes to the laws of the game. There weren't many, but one of the changes included a small change in the language of Law 11, specifically pertaining to gaining an advantage by being in that position. This is what it said before. Gaining an advantage by being in that position means playing a ball that rebounds to him off a goalpost or the crossbar having been in an offside position, or playing a ball that rebounds to him off an opponent having been in an offside position. This is what it said after the change. Gaining an advantage by being in that position means playing a ball that 1. Rebounds or is deflected to him off the goalpost, crossbar, or an opponent having been in an offside position, and 2. That rebounds, is deflected, or is played to him from a deliberate save by an opponent having been in an offside position. A player in an offside position receiving the ball from an opponent who deliberately plays the ball except from a deliberate save is not considered to have gained an advantage. On the surface, this doesn't seem like anything significant. In fact, U.S. Soccer released its law changes video later in the summer of 2013 and said this.
U.S. Soccer recommends that referees not implement Law 11 any differently than they have in the past.
Minnesota referees may recall watching that video because it was part of the required topics for 2014. And if you did, you probably shrugged your shoulders and said, okay, moving on here, nothing to see. Well, the problem was that the seemingly innocuous change in language actually did have a significant shift in the application of the law. Anybody who's been following professional soccer in the past 12 months may have noticed referees at the professional level making some rare offside decisions that, well, didn't seem to be in line with the way we've always applied Law 11 to those specific situations. And that's because at the game's highest level, they sat down and reevaluated what this new language actually meant and realized that IFAB had changed the law rather dramatically. And that's what this podcast is all about today, explaining how the law now works under this new language. And it means you should start applying it this way immediately. Let's start by looking at a clip. A lot of folks in Minnesota may be familiar with this clip, though people outside Minnesota may not be. This was from the North American Soccer League semifinal match between Minnesota United and Fort Lauderdale. The referee was Fotis Bazakos.
Brito, Anderson, gets it back, it's through, Nunez! No goal, offside is Fort Lauderdale.
There were 3 guys offside, Chris. What's Fort Lauderdale doing? There were 3 players offside.
And the Fort Lauderdale bench has erupted as well. Referee over to have a chat with his AR. And it's a goal! Martin Nunez has equalized it here in extra time. You see the battle. Here's Anderson with it.
Three guys are in offside position when the ball's played. Who's it go to?
It's going to go to Nunez right in the middle.
He's offside. Chris, not even close. We saw it. What?
It looks like it went off the deflection.
Doesn't make any difference. It does not make any difference. The deflection does not make a difference, Chris. It's when it leaves his foot. Watch again. It leaves the player's foot. Right there, offside. Offside. Can't make any other call. The linesman, I don't know why the lineman changed his mind.
The decision here is about as critical as you can get. Fort Lauderdale scores the tying goal in added time, forcing the game into extra time. Eventually, Fort Lauderdale wins this game and kicks from the mark, eliminating Minnesota at home after United had posted the best record in the league during the season. In other words, this is a gutsy decision to make in front of what would absolutely be a hostile crowd. The Fort Lauderdale player who scores the goal is in offside position when the ball is played by his teammate. Nobody disputes that. When the ball squirms through to him, the assistant referee raises the flag to indicate offside, but no whistle sounds. The Fort Lauderdale player scores. Initially, it looks like the goal will be waved off due to the flag, and the Fort Lauderdale players immediately confront the assistant. Fotis comes over and shoos them away and has a short conversation with the assistant, then awards the goal. The key moment in this play comes when the initial pass is mishit and dribbles to United defender Kevin Venegas. Venegas is caught off guard, but he makes a deliberate attempt to play the ball. Remember the new language. You can argue that the ball doesn't go where Venegas wants it to go. You can argue Venegas was under pressure from attackers, including perhaps even the offside attacker. But under the new language of Law 11, none of that matters. The only thing that matters here is that Venegas made a deliberate play on the ball, and that play was not a save of a shot. The law allows for goalkeepers to save shots, and it allows for defenders to save shots, for example, if they're standing on the goal line. And in such cases, should the ball deflect to an attacker who is offside at the time of the shot, the attacker would be gaining an advantage from that position. However, if the attacker's play on the ball was not a shot, the gaining an advantage clause cannot apply. Therefore, this is a pass that is played deliberately by a defender, and that play nullifies all three clauses of Law 11. The offside attacker is not interfering with play by playing the ball. He is not interfering with an opponent by keeping that opponent from playing the ball or impairing his view of an incoming shot. And, as we have just established, he is not gaining an advantage from that position under the new specific instructions established by the language change. This is not offside. Fotis correctly overrules the AR's offside flag and awards this game-tying goal. Now wait just a cotton-picking minute, you're probably thinking. I've been watching or playing or coaching or refereeing soccer for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. That is not how offside is applied. Our answer to you, you're right. For the past 25 years or so, that is not how offside was applied. Heck, listen to the color announcer as they replay the goal.
Three guys are in offside position when the ball's played. Who's it go to?
It's going to go to Nunez right in the middle.
He's offside. Chris, not even close. We saw it. What?
It looks like it went off the deflection.
Doesn't make any difference. It does not make any difference. The deflection does not make a difference, Chris. It's when it leaves his foot. Watch again. It leaves the player's foot. Right there, offside. Offside. Can't make any other call. The linesman, I don't know why the lineman changed his mind.
That color announcer is Buzz Lagos, arguably the father of all things soccer in Minnesota. Lagos basically created the team, Minnesota Thunder, that evolved into Minnesota United. His sons, Manny and Gerard, both played professionally, with Manny earning 3 caps for the national team and eventually becoming now the manager of Minnesota United. In other words, Buzz Lagos knows what he's talking about, and his explanation of why this play should have been called offside is absolutely correct for how the law was to be applied until July 2013. Before you start barraging the State Referee Committee with emails about how we're making all this up, let's just listen to Fotis and Steve Olson explain it. For the next 10 minutes, we're turning the podcast over to Fotis and Steve with footage from the November LAC clinic held in St. Paul.
And of course, the training for us started, early in the year with this message about what's a deliberate play. was made very clear. So in this case, you can see from the beginning of the season, interpretations coming from FIFA into U.S. Soccer and the Professional Rugby Organization is any action taken by the defender, regardless of if the ball goes where they want to or not, negates the offside. And this is a movement view. And so we knew it was going to take some time, and we knew it was going to come up. And so we started talking about the referee's responsibilities in this situation. And there's a couple of ways of dealing with it. And you guys, if you got something to share about how you would deal with it, jump in. Myself personally, the first thing that I did is I decided to make it part of my pregame. Now this actually happened to me where a goal resulted, I think, 4 times this year. So I got a pretty good system down, and I actually can tell you that it works about 25% of the time. So we got to find something better because I've gotten to help from 0 to 25. So I'm open to ideas. It's never going to be foolproof. Obviously, we have the communication system, and you have. Well, you guys saw it, a split second. We've encouraged the assistant referees to wait and see. Okay, that's part of the pregame. If you're not sure, the flag doesn't go up. Okay, the ball ends up in the net. Stand still. Okay, so there's some ability there for the assistant referee to help. Okay, we talked about that. The other part is with the communication system is you've got time to say one word. Okay, so I don't know if it's like your safety word or whatever you want to call it. In this case, I've chosen the word defender. Okay, and that's the only time I ever say the word defender, and that is my message to the assistant referee that the defender deliberately played the ball.
In the headset world, the word defender gets transmitted into your ear, right? So now I go back to 1970. When the touch absolved you from offside, regardless of what it was. The mechanic was check back with the referee. Okay, so now we have wait, see, check. Only check doesn't happen. So in your minds that we've just messed with illusions, ball is passed forward and it's clear to you that it's been touched. I don't care whether you decide, it's not your decision to decide whether or not it was played. It's the referee's decision, okay? But the ball goes forward, there's a deflection, it's clear that the direction and the speed of the ball has changed, right? This can't happen until you check. Only it does. There's another step in the mechanic right now that's not happening, and if it doesn't happen, his percentage of getting these communicated, I'm not saying right or wrong, but communicated, is going to stay at 25%. So the curve is don't call. Take a chance with the ball instead of a chance with the flag. That creates a lot of fear. So he's got to work through that.
What I said earlier about your priority, okay, you have to be prepared mentally for all those things. So I can tell you, for me personally, all 3 calls were equal. Okay, and they were all equally easy. And that's simply because for me the priority is applying the rules and getting the call correct. I knew what was going to happen as far as the way that they were going to go after the assistant referee, to the way the coaches were going to be, to what was going to happen post-game. All that work mentally and also physically from a plan perspective has to be ready ahead of time because you can't invent something on the fly. So I've earned a lot of personal capital telling them that I know this doesn't look good, but I can tell you after the game, when everything settles down, you guys will see that this was the correct thing. And some of them handled it and some of them didn't. I can tell you, I had a 5-second chat with Manny as I went through the side right there, and I'd already thrown out the coach from Fort Lauderdale earlier in the match. So I expected him to do what he does to everybody else, and I just looked at him and I said the same thing. It's like, I told him the defender played the ball, and I'm going to have to explain it to you afterwards. And he stayed calm. I have to give him credit. He didn't go ballistic. He didn't go nuts. Right. And he did what I would expect a very professional coach to do. Because he put the flag up. So there was a couple of things. Once the flag went up and you could see it, that gave an indication to the Fort Lauderdale players and an excuse for them to go over there. So no matter what, I had to go over there. What I have learned to do in this league is if I run over there, and you can see the reaction, like you can see Jorge kind of, and we said we're going to say names, but okay, bouncing up and down, trying to avoid the guys. And I don't know if that's the best thing, because sometimes we do certain actions and it makes things worse. Okay, and so for me, my plan from that second was immediately into defusing those. Okay, and I had already made up my mind in the sense of what I had seen. So everything that I was doing was trying to calm the players down. Okay, and I went over to Jorge and asked him what he saw. I gave him a piece of information that I tried to give electronically, and he didn't have that information, and so it was very simple afterwards. In this country, okay, in the games that we're doing, okay, I have found that a calm approach tends to diffuse the situation faster than a more authoritative, I'm in charge, you're wrong, I'm right, type of thing.
When you watch this, you watch all of the replays that go along, you watch photos, when you engage with these players, in fact, you have your hand behind your back, he's walking really slowly, and then he comes to a point where he stops and he lets them, okay? You watch the AR. When the AR is doing don't do that. That body language is, you are standing there holding the stake in front of a group of 100 tigers. That body language, even if they don't directly sense it, is you're not comfortable. You need to get comfortable, you need to stand up, you need to look them in the eye, don't let them yell, and don't, when you get to the point with them saying, you don't have to be profane or yell at me to communicate it. Right? But moving around is just going to draw them to you. You got to be very careful with that. The other thing I really like is that as a referee, he has a sense of what his actions may do to help or bury the AR. You got to be really careful with that.
And it's automatic cover from the pregame, and in this case, and Kyle can tell you how many minutes we spent talking about this play before the game.
2-3. I mean, we covered it.
Okay, so 2-3 minutes talking about this before the game. Okay, that it was going to happen, that I'm only successful in preventing it 25% of the time. Okay, and that would be the situation where if you're the assistant referee, and it's possible maybe you're not sure of the latest interpretation, that you would ask for clarity in that. At any rate, in this case, because of his focus and concentration on the play itself and no comfort around using that, the message wasn't received.
I would also say Jorge's by the time you said it was so bang bang that the ball was
Yeah.
the young guys look as it's coming through.
Yeah, and you can see it and you're seeing it in pretty slow motion. So again, and that's why it's not 25% because we're not any good at communicating. It's 25% because it's such a situation and it happens so quickly. And the one earlier in the season, same thing. The assistant referee was shielded from it, and it was very, very quick. So
again, for your coach, you say defense, that takes keep playing bang.
yeah, or I'm sharing with them that last touch
That last touch
was a deliberate play by the defender. Not for me. No. And then you're getting into how you sell it. Okay, remember what's the most important thing? Get it right. Again, the priority is We are the keeper of the game, we're in charge, we know the rules, we have the interpretation. Okay, we have to do our best to enforce what we know is correct.
And one of the things that always comes up is there has to be a translation to the 13, 14-year-old kid, right? The reality is that this is where it sucks to be you. This is easy. I've given you the analogy about you're going to get killed in the morning by an archer. I want the guy who takes one arrow right there. I don't want 19 arrows in my body and believe that just put me out of my misery. Well, the difference between a professional player making an intentional play versus a 13-year-old making an intentional play is don't think that you can apply the word intent to a 13-year-old effectively in all cases, right? So you have a problem. The other problem that you have is the majority of coaches that coach, especially from lower than premier level, have absolutely no idea that this is the current rule. And if you listen to the banter in the stands from the Fort Lauderdale game, it's crystal clear that the fans don't know the rule either. Okay? So you've got two uphill battles. One, you've got the skill sets of the players and the knowledge base of the coaches.
The manner in which the law is interpreted is different from what we have become accustomed to. And that is why this podcast is so important. If you're a referee and you're saying that this goal needs to be taken away, then you are applying the law incorrectly. Period. No arguing. You're wrong. If you're a coach and you're teaching your defenders that this is offside, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Referees should not be calling this offside, and if you tell players otherwise, then you're going to be in for some heartache. Let's look at some other examples to further clarify this.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a strong MV Lee campaign on. Some other good candidates around the league to be sure, but Lee's made a big difference to this team. The Revs on the attack with the flags up, and that will not be Lee's 18th goal. What's going on here? Are they giving a goal?
Well, the
mass confusion here because the flag was up and then the flag went down.
referee put his flag up. Let's have a look at it now. For me, it's a tight one, but he's offside.
He's offside, but they didn't call it. What's strange is
the assistant referee had his flag up, and everybody stops.
I think the question is phases of play, right? Is he back?
José Sánchez pregunta que si vamos a televisar Chivas contra Tijuana. Claro que sí, a través de Univisión Deportes en Unimás. No se separen. Tony Shani va mirando, parecía que apuntaba, le entrega a Francis, el servicio, el remate. ¡Gol! Sobre la hora, una jugada perdida. Ha renacido la aspiración del Crew cuando apenas allí pone el punterazo. Mamita querida, habilitado o no, estaba Bernardo Añor. Cristo.
In the first example, the ball is played through to New England's Chris Tierney. Tierney is offside when the ball is played. Toronto's Dominic Aduro attempts to block the through ball and succeeds in getting his head to it, a deliberate play of the ball, which then negates Tierney's offside position. It's not a deflection, and the fact that Tierney is offside and the target of the initial through ball is rendered inconsequential as soon as Aduro deliberately plays the ball. He can no longer be gaining an advantage because the played ball is clearly a pass, and Aduro plays the ball deliberately. In the second example, the Crew decides that Philadelphia's Maurice Adou's play on this ball is neither a deflection nor a deliberate save. Now this one gets a bit tricky because the play by Columbus's Waylon Francis can be argued to be a shot, and therefore you might argue that Adou's touch is therefore a deliberate save. However, the key here is that the goalkeeper is positioned behind Adou, prepared to make a save if the ball were to get through. Because of this, Adou's deliberate touch cannot be defined as a save by a defender. He therefore resets the offside decision with this touch. For a more visual explanation, here we see an example of a true save by a defender on a shot. The defender is just in front of the goal line and moves to block the ball to keep it from entering the goal. and had the defender not been there, the ball would have entered the goal. This is the definition of a save by a defender for the purpose of Law 11. When the ball deflects to the offside attacker, offside should be called for gaining an advantage. Now let's look at a case of the assistant referee seeing the touch and nailing the decision.
Fave does not want Cummings to turn, and he does. And it's Barnes who's gotten in. It's a struggle here. Montreal hasn't reacted. Barnes to make it run, and he does. The Montreal Impact made a huge mistake.
Houston's Omar Cummings plays a ball through for a clearly offside Giles Barnes, but Montreal's Christophe Kroll deliberately tries to block the pass, failing to do so, and it bounces off of him to Barnes. Barnes then takes the ball down the field and scores. This is a deliberate touch by Kroll, and therefore it negates all three means of Barnes being penalized for becoming involved in active play. The touch is seen clearly by the assistant referee, who properly keeps the flag down, permitting the attack to proceed, and Houston scores the opening goal. However, consider this example from a recent NCAA playoff game.
Snowy conditions in Waverly on Saturday for the first round of the NCAA men's soccer tournament as 16th-ranked Wartburg hosted Milwaukee School of Engineering. 34th minute, a funky back pass leaves Zach Smith absolutely wide open. Raiders wanted an offsides call, but he slips past everybody and scores, and the Knights take a 1-0 lead into the halftime break.
Here, the orange team is bringing the ball up the field when a tackle by white puts the ball into no man's land. A white player comes charging in and blasts the ball in the direction of his own goal, playing the ball off an orange player. The ball ricochets wildly back towards the orange goal to a white player who is, for the sake of simplicity here, let's just assume, in offside position when his teammate played the ball off the opponent. That white attacker then dribbles in and scores. Based on the new language of the law, this is still offside. You have to ask yourself if the orange player made a deliberate play on the ball. We think it's safe to say that the poor fellow was just standing there when the ball was blasted off of him at point-blank range. He had no time to adjust or make any attempt to play the ball. Therefore, this is a deflection. And per the new language, a player who plays the ball that, quote, rebounds to him off an opponent is still gaining an advantage from that position. Therefore, this should have been called offside, assuming, of course, that the player who received the ball was in offside position at the time his teammate played it. Because this is lower quality field level footage, we can't really say that with 100% assuredness in this clip. One more example to look at, this time from the MLS playoffs.
Mistake in the back, Sagaya, the flag was up for offside. Ibrahim Sagaya on what looked like a harmless long ball, miscontrolled it, swing and a miss, but Davies, when he caught up to it, started in an offside position, so the flag is up.
Well, as the ball is played there, he's in an offside position, and it doesn't matter that even if Sagaya touches that, he never has the ball under control. So at the moment the ball is played, when Charlie Davies is involved, the flag's got to go up.
This clip is great because it shows how much potential harm can be created from a color announcer not being up to date on the interpretation of the rules. And it warrants mentioning that Kyle Martino is actually one of the most knowledgeable and fair color announcers in the sport. He rarely, if ever, throws referees under the bus in his analysis. This ball is played forward for New England's Charlie Davies, who is in an offside position. New York's Ambroise Yongo attempts to knock the ball down, but misses, and it goes through to Davies. Martino says it doesn't matter if a Yongo plays this ball, that offside would be called anyway. Alas, under the new language, Martino's incorrect. The reason the flag comes up is because a Yongo does not touch the ball. Attempting to play the ball but failing to do so does not negate the offside ruling. A Yongo has to actually deliberately play the ball to negate the clause. Because he does not touch it, Davies becomes involved in active play when he plays the ball, last played by a teammate and with no deliberate plays by an opponent. So offside is correctly called here. But it's called because he's interfering with play. We would imagine that your mind is spinning a bit at this point. If you're a coach or a player, we are sure that you find all of this kind of ridiculous. In each of the first three clips, where offside was not called and the attacking team scored, we're sure that you would argue that the spirit of Law 11 was still violated. An attacker was in offside position when the ball was played by a teammate, and furthermore, the attacker was almost clearly the target of the initial pass in 2 of those clips. Our response to you? Yep. We don't write the rules, and truth be told, we aren't even the ones who make up the final interpretation of them. Our job is to make sure we spread the gospel that we're being told to spread. So as you watch all of this and maybe shake your head, we'd politely ask you to not shoot the messengers. We know there will be an adjustment period to this. We tell all of our Minnesota referees to watch the podcast. Hopefully most of them do, but some may not. Or some may be sticks in the mud and refuse to call 11 the correct way. Mostly, we just want coaches and players to watch this so that they understand the interpretation has changed, and that maybe, just maybe, having heard it prior to seeing it might temper some of your on-field disgust, disappointment, or surprise. The people who write the laws presumably made these changes to accomplish 2 things. 1, make it simpler for referees to make offside decisions. Whether you like this change or not, and odds are you probably don't, you can't argue with the fact that it takes a lot of the referee's opinion out of the interpretation. Before, people would argue about whether the defender was under duress, whether the ball was going where the defender wanted it to go, and so forth. Now, if the defender tries to play the ball, boom, we're done. 2, as with many of the law changes that have occurred in the last 25 years, this change is designed to help increase goal scoring. Defenders are now accountable for physical mistakes negating offside situations. Again, like it or not, and like I said, odds are you don't, this is the direction things have gone and will continue to go. It's okay to not agree with it, but you still have to accept it. Referees who are watching this, rest be assured that if you want to ignore these instructions, then you are not enforcing the laws correctly, and we can't protect you from criticism if you keep calling offside for what you think are deflections when they're actually deliberate plays of the ball. Plain and simple, you'll be wrong. Well, check back later this month for the Dark Side podcast. We should have it released before the new year. Until next time.